Welcome back to the Bionicle Inspiration Series. We spotlight mocks from across the community to give you some ideas for future builds. Today we're going to be talking about frames. Now, what do I mean by frames? I mean like the skeleton behind builds. You know, before you armor them up, what does it look like so that you can then armor it up? It's often a lot easier to design a mock if you have that frame or that skeleton that you can just decorate. So let's investigate how some other builders have designed a frame, and then we'll see what ideas we can take from them and implement into our own future frames. Let's get stuck into it. Duncan Lindebow has built Combat Droid N99 Neptune. So like I said before, a frame is just meant to be like a skeleton that you can then armor up to actually build your mock. So, you know, some frames will allow for more like posability or a more unique look, or it can even help you achieve maybe like a larger or a smaller scale for your build. You know, something like the Bionicle frame that I've spoken about in previous episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series that have been about frames. It's a pretty large frame to build with, so if you're looking to build a Titan mock, it's the perfect thing. But a frame like this, I think it achieves something that's pretty cool that some other frames don't always necessarily do. It allows for some of the frame's details to actually creep through into the final design. I mean, let's look at the frame itself. So some parts of it look, I guess, like less than appealing, you know, specifically some of these sections here that use a lot of these bracket snot pieces, you know, like the upper legs or the upper torso. There's those exposed studs on there, and it's not necessarily the best aesthetic. But you have areas like the lower waist or the lower parts of the legs where you've got these awesome yellow piston pieces. And these are certainly helping, you know, structurally, because we can see on the torso that they help like support the lower waist into the upper body. But then, you know, these yellow pistons, they look really cool, don't they? And the fact that the final product actually lets them peek through, that's really nice. Because, yeah, the yellow, the blue mixed in with the different shades of grey, it's really pretty. Plus, those exposed pistons really help to give this nice, like, industrial look. The pistons kind of give me, vibes of, like, an excavator that has some of those exposed pistons on there. It's just a cool look. So why cover that up? Why not let that shine through? So it's really nice that that was the choice made here with this frame, and maybe you want to do the exact same thing, because sometimes frames can look a bit ugly, but sometimes they can actually look kind of cool. Why cover that up? Something to consider, that's for sure. Now, I mentioned those studs before. It's nice how accommodating this frame is to both Technic pieces, as well as CCBS parts, and also system pieces. You've got those CCBS bones on the upper arms, you've got all of those studs for system stuff, and, you know, looking at the final product, all of those lovely wedge pieces on the torso look so nice with the CCBS pieces as well. This really is a stunning combination of system and CCBS. It just blends together so well. It's nice to note that those wedge plate pieces, well, they're not actually wedge plates, are they? I always get confused with that. You got wedge plates, you got actual wedges, and you've got certain slopes that actually classify as wedges and not as slopes. Lego names can be confusing, but still, it's nice to know that those wedge pieces really do look so good with CCBS parts. So if you're considering playing with system, take a look at the wedge categories on Bricklink and have a browse through those pieces, see if you've got any, and put them together, and you might make something beautiful just like this mock here. But yeah, brilliant frame, and honestly an even better end product too. You know, those shoulder turrets are so cool, and it looks like this guy can pose really well. There's just so much to love on this build. The next mock here is Cardox, and it's by Julian Astrorix. All right, let's take a closer look at this frame here and see if any little tidbits here can help us with building our own frames. So it's nice to see these lower legs using these prefab limb elements. And then they're kind of just like strapped onto the front there, right? And, you know, normally an exposed socket piece at the very top of that piece there, it might look a little bit strange. That exposed ball, it just kind of doesn't make sense, right? But, you know, when we see the final product, of course, that gets covered up there because they're just placing a CCBS torso piece over that exposed ball joint, and suddenly it turns into a lovely knee design that bridges the upper leg into the lower leg in a really nice way. Just above that on the knee, we can see the use of this black disc piece there on the side of the knee. Because when we take a look at the final model, it's really cool how nice that black disc works in with all the other armor that's around it. It fills in the gap between the upper and lower leg, and it just makes that transition super seamless and a lot prettier to look at. So it's nice that a frame can literally just be you designing, you know, random connection points all over the place, adding to this weird, basic, strange skeleton. But you can leave out little tiny areas like this so that when you do armor it up later, there might be a few areas where you're like, no, I really need it to look a specific way. So you put in that little detail on the actual frame, and when you do armor it up, when you come to that area, you're like, yep, I know exactly what I need to be doing here. So it's almost like a little guide that can help you later on when you're actually getting into those nitty-gritty details. I think putting in something early like that, it's a good call, and it's a nice way to kind of guide you in a specific direction if you have a specific direction in mind. So yeah, it's nice to see that was there on the original frame when it is unarmored. Now, I'm sure you've noticed as well, just all over this frame, there's a bunch of random connection points. Now, we can see heaps of them on the torso here specifically, like this connector and this axle that's just sticking out the middle of the torso at a weird angle. We can see later on when the mock is finished that there is a silver mask over the top of this and some silver Rakshi heads just next to it. And I think that makes for a wonderful torso design. It looks a bit like some sort of solid knight armor. I think it's just a really good look. But yeah, I mean, like, that's all you need for a frame. Stick random connection points out at strange angles, and you can come back later and cover them up in some fashion. And, you know, maybe when you do cover them up, you might be like, yeah, I don't really know what I was thinking here. There's axles sticking out in weird directions. You can always come back and change it, you know. There's that weird connector piece that's sticking out at a specific angle. Maybe you need that angle to be slightly lower. Just swap out a piece for a different one. And, you know, you should then be able to play with it a little bit more easily. But that's the beautiful thing with these frames. They can be sort of locked in things that you can play with, but it's Lego. You can modify it however you want, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We spoke a bit about the frame, but let's talk about this wonderful mock too. The final product is great. I love how they've used Axon's mask on its side for the head design here. It is a very unique but very cool look. Plus this interesting ring on the back. I don't really know what it is, but it's really fancy, and I think it looks really nice. It gives it this almost angelic, holy look, and yeah, it's perfect for a sort of godlike character. I don't know if this is a godlike character. There's not much of a description for this mock on Flickr, but yeah, that's okay. It's a great look, regardless of what it's meant to be. I think they've achieved a very distinct and very different look, which is always good to see on a Bionicle character, so love what you've done here. Psycho Destructo has built Chump Basher. Now, this is a bit of a unique one, and it's a tad different from the others we've seen, but I adore the concept behind this. So basically, the builder said that they love the play feature from the Bionicle G2 set Skull Basher, this one specifically, and they were inspired by the look of it, and they thought, hey, I'm going to look up the instructions on lego.com for Skull Basher, and sort of just armor up the frame that the set itself had and use it for my own designs. What a cool idea. I think that's really awesome because, honestly, there are a bunch of LEGO sets out there that exist that had pretty decent frames to them. I love the frame on the set Witch Doctor, a wonderful Hero Factory set. And then also there was, I think, a brilliant frame, or at least a brilliant torso design on the set Sidorak. I've always loved how that torso looked. That's just two examples. There's others out there as well. But yeah, you can go to lego.com, you can download free instructions for basically any set out there. Why not browse through some of them? You might even have a specific set in mind that you're already thinking about. Why not take those brilliant frames from those sets and make them into your own unique characters? I mean, obviously, a lot of these frames I've been showing you, there aren't really instructions for most of them out there. You would have to reverse engineer some of these to build them, or just, like we're doing, take inspiration from some of them and make your own unique design out of it. But hey, there are definitely instructions out there for the sets, so there's no use reinventing the wheel here. You may as well take a look at some of that stuff. So yeah, it's cool to see how they've buffed up the torso a bit here. Skull Basher himself didn't really have as buff of a torso, but I think that change is very, very welcome here. Plus, Skull Basher, of course, had that cool play feature, which was part of the reason that the original builder used that frame for this build. So hey, if you're someone who likes a good play feature on a mock, well, Skull Basher did have a very prominent and unique play feature, so yeah, why not put that into your own designs? People love a good gear function, nothing wrong with that. So yeah, sets have good frames, and I think that frame was brilliantly adapted onto this mock. Really well done. Now we go into a mock by Kelvin Lowe, and this is Gypsy Avenger. I mean, before we even talk about the frame on this is a phenomenal build. This is a really incredibly well-made version of Gypsy Avenger from the movie Pacific Rim, which is a movie that has a lot of inspiration for construction robot characters. So if you're after a bit of inspiration and you just want to watch a movie, go watch that. It's probably going to give you some ideas. But yeah, it's incredible to see how Kelvin has used so many wedge pieces, slopes, tiles, everything to just perfectly recreate the ebbs and flows of the armor from the original source material. And I love the idea of using these Nexonite sword pieces to recreate the blades that you see in the movie. Really great part choice for that, and it just looks so, so good. Now, as nice as the finished product is, let's check out the awesome frame behind this. So this is fairly similar to what we saw before on the Neptune frame in terms of the fact that it uses a ton of bracket pieces. This way there's a bunch of studs on many different surfaces. They're on the front, the side, and sometimes even on the back of the individual body parts that those brackets are used on. So seeing so many of them in action here, I think it's a great reminder of just how helpful brackets are. It allows you, like I said, to place pieces on all sorts of different sides, and then you've got so many different connection points with all of these different studs. If you don't have any brackets in your collection or any kind of snot pieces that have studs on their side, it might be worth grabbing some because we've seen them on a couple frames now. They're a very helpful piece for frames. Another thing I like on this frame is the elbow design. It's using these 1x2 curved plate pieces, and then it's linking them together with these T-bar pneumatic tube pieces. Great idea. Plus adding in those boat studs on the sides to smooth it out, and then on the back we can see there's some of those cylinder parts too. It's cool. It's great to see system parts being used, but all of those studs are completely covered up so that it remains smooth and it fits in with the really clean finish that the final design has. It's nice to know that the limitation of system pieces having a blockier look isn't always something you have to worry about. You can just cover it up and put smoother stuff over the top of it. So yeah, that looks really cool. And it looks like a very posable elbow connection too. So a lot to love about that. A pleasant surprise with this is that I thought it was interesting to note that the shoulder armor is an entirely separate joint that is linked on with some different mixel joints, which means it's a bit posable. And I thought that was cool. Just looking at the original images, I thought that the final product had those shoulders attached to the arm itself, not that they were a sort of separate entity almost. And I like that idea because I imagine the reason that they did that was, as you can see in some of these images, the arm is able to move codependently from the shoulders, so it means it can get in a lot more unique positions and poses. So that's a pretty solid idea to actually keep that separate there, and you wouldn't notice it on the final product, well, unless you're looking a little bit more in depth and realizing that it poses and stuff, but whatever, it doesn't look like it's a separate thing. So yeah, great idea there so that it maintains a good level of posability, but also then you don't have to worry too much about the arms being maybe too top heavy or whatever. Yeah, it's just a win-win situation. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, by the way, Kelvin Lowe, who's also known as Chubby Bots, has their own YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description because please go check out his incredible stuff. The dude has so much amazing content. Please follow them. Please check them out. They build so many cool mechs. They post instructions. They've got a bunch of other frames and different things that you can study on both on their Flickr and on their YouTube. So please, please, please check them out. I've said that 3 times now. You better do it. He's a phenomenal person, phenomenal builder, and they just build so much good stuff. You're missing out if you're not looking. Go support that very, very talented dude. Now back to the mock, I'm sure some of you will be like, Ben, this is the Bionicle Inspiration series, and this is a really heavily system-based mock. You're right, you're 100% correct, but if you want to include a little bit of system-focused areas on your Bionicle mocks, which is happening more and more today in the Bionicle community, and there's nothing wrong with that, maybe you could take a few ideas from some of the system parts and pieces that were used here, or some of the techniques on the frame and stuff like that. And you know what, let's just completely ignore the fact that this is a very system-focused mock. Just the idea alone of having these shoulders be posable and be separate from the limbs, great idea. Now your shoulder armor isn't going to get in the way of your arms as it moves, so you can get all sorts of cool poses out of that. So that in itself, regardless of what medium of pieces this used, what a cool idea. So hey, we can always take a good amount of inspiration from system mocks, much like this one. Chubby Bots, you did some cool stuff. Love your work. And that's it for this episode today, guys. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at a bunch of different frames from across the Bionicle community, and hopefully it's given you some ideas for your own builds too. If you've got a frame or any other kind of Bionicle mock that you've made, or a system mock, who knows, you can submit it through the submission email that's on your screen right now, and I'll do my best to feature it in a future episode. Additionally, in the description below are links to all of the builders that I spoke about today, so be sure to check out some of the other fantastic work that they've all done. Not just Chubby Bots too, check out some of the other links in the description, see what those other builders have built. Also in the description are links to my own social media as well, so you can see some of my builds over there if you're interested. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.